Hi, welcome to another edition of IB Somm. I'm Heather Boyd, and my guest today is Elena Favaro Vienna, and she's a business lawyer in Toronto, Ontario. Elena, why don't you tell us a little bit about your business, please?
I will. Hello, everybody. So just like Heather introduced me, my name is Elena, and I like to call myself a small business lawyer. So I specialize in online business law, and I cater towards really solopreneurs, mompreneurs, small entrepreneurs, and small business owners. And so that's who I help, and that's what I do.
Excellent. And you're practicing law in Ontario, but what you're doing primarily, or your main source of income, can I say that, is your contracts website, right? So why don't you give us a little run through of what your contracts website is, and we'll put all the information in the information below.
Absolutely. When I started my firm, what I was noticing is that a lot of people that I was servicing were associating lawyers with being more expensive, with being something that was out of reach for something that they could afford. So the types of clients that I work with are typically side hustlers or stay-at-home moms, mompreneurs, small business owners. So they weren't prioritizing legal the way they should, right? And you and I know that, a business is literally founded on its legal foundations. I mean, the business structure is what holds it together. So it isn't something that can be skipped. It is a necessary step. So in that process, I ended up founding what is now known as Contracts for Entrepreneurs to help bridge that gap of affordability. And what it is really a boutique e-commerce shop with a collection of legal contract templates for online service providers.
That is, so I'm just going to interject here. I want to say it to make sure people understand what it is. It's contractsforentrepreneurs.com. Now tell us about the contracts that you've got up on there, please.
So we have a small collection. We have about 30 different contracts, and it's growing. So every quarter we do another dump. But right now we have contracts for, service providers, so social media managers, our graphic designers, our virtual assistants. We have quite a few contracts for our coaches. We have contracts for membership, subscription site style businesses, our fitness coaches, fitness providers, waivers, our COVID waivers, all the contracts you need to protect your website, photography. I mean, it's all of these little small business areas, and we've created contract templates that are plug and play so that you can literally remove the lawyer from the equation, but you have something drafted by a lawyer that will work for you.
That's awesome, because we get so many people contacting us saying, can you look at this? Can you look at that? And while I don't mind looking at contracts that deal with intellectual property, that's a very small portion of any legal contract. So, and that's the only thing I feel comfortable with. So when you reached out to me on Facebook and the trademark attorneys page, I guess it was primarily for US attorneys, but we were both on there. It was almost like a godsend, because we do have a very symbiotic relationship.
Well, we need each other. And that's the thing, for anybody who's in Canada, if you see a lot of knowledge out there, it's usually US based.
Right.
So it's different up here, and the way that we do things in Canada is different. And so our relationship was really, we needed each other.
Exactly. So I want to go back, and you mentioned across Canada, and you are licensed in Ontario. Tell us a little bit about the contracts that can go nationwide, because I know there's a difference, right?
Right. So lawyers are typically called to the bar in their jurisdiction, right? So I'm called to the Bar of Ontario. So what that means from a legal standpoint, when we're looking at laws, I can only really write contracts that are specific to Ontario law. But not every contract is really heavy in legal foundations, right? Some are, so we restrict ourselves to only Ontario-based clients, but others, which actually form the majority of my practice, are more industry-specific contracts, right? So a photographer in Ontario is going to face the exact same horror stories and problems as a photographer in Vancouver. And so we pull those industry standards in order to create these contracts, because it isn't legal to say, oh, we only want one photographer at the wedding. I mean, that's not a legal thing. However, it is something that a lot of photographers are very passionate about and want in their contract. So we write that in, and that becomes the more industry specific.
Right. Okay. So the types of contracts you have, when you're talking about contracts that are solely for Ontario, that would be like partnership agreements in Ontario, or?
Yeah, so that's a great example. So partnerships absolutely pull on local law. So do incorporation agreements, anything related to taxes. Some intellectual property clauses are rooted in Ontario law. So when we're talking about licensing agreements, that pulls some jurisdictional legislation. So there's a couple of things that definitely, I can't write incorporation documents for Manitoba. I can only do that for Ontario.
But a generic privacy policy, or coaching and consulting, what type of contract they would have that would be more looking at industry standards versus, jurisdictionally provisional.
So you pulled two really cool examples, actually. So let's start with your second one first, which was the coaching, but I want to circle back to privacy because a lot of people don't know that one is legally required. So when we're looking at coaching, and this is really cool because I work with clients from Ireland to Australia, the US, like kind of all over the place, because coaching is as of right now, at the time of recording, an unregulated industry. But coaches, like the example, they all experience the same type of way of operating and most of the same problems. Mm-hmm. So when we're looking at coaches, we're going to talk about how do you deliver your services? What are the structures? What kind of terminations do you want? Like, when can someone fire you? When can you fire them? With coaches, we talk a lot about payments, refunds, because coaching, like therapy, you pay, you've committed. So not a lot of people offer refunds, but you can't just put no refund. That's one thing that a lot of people think. They just write no refund and call it a day. And it's like, no, hold on. Because some
parameters and everything, right?
There are absolutely parameters. So you have to fill them out and write that in. But there's a lot of similarities across coaching, really universally. There isn't a lot of big difference there, I would say. So that is one of the industry specific contracts that I love to do, because coaches from all over the world really have similar businesses. And
so your reach is not just in Canada, then it actually extends kind of worldwide for some of these industry specific contracts that you're talking about.
Absolutely.
All right, let's circle back to privacy policy, because I know that one's a requirement here.
It's a requirement. So a lot of people, so here's the general rule of thumb. If you have a website, you need a privacy policy. No ifs, ands, or buts. You have a website, you legally are required by Canadian legislation to have one. But here's the fun fact. You're also legally required to have one by American legislation. So you're also legally required to have one by Australian legislation. So if you have a website, you need one, because even if you're thinking, oh, well, I'm only in Canada and like Americans aren't coming to my website. Well, if an American does come to your website is actually intervening and infringing on their rights as an American. So your privacy policy, not only do you need to have one, you also need to cater to certain jurisdictions that you are expecting to get the majority of your clients or user base from.
So let's talk about that one a little bit, because I counsel people all the time that they need to have a privacy policy on their website. If they're not collecting any information from that, if it's solely a landing page, then the bare minimum is required, right? But they still need a privacy policy, do they not?
It depends. So yes, they always need a privacy policy. The it depends comes on the bare minimum, because what we think as a privacy policy, if they're not accepting emails or payment, well, we're not collecting anything. But the internet just by default is already collecting cookies on you anyway. So just by you putting up something, even if you're not doing anything with it, you're still collecting metadata from users coming onto your website. So that cookies, that, the thing that your computer saves magically, all of that counts. And so you do need to have a privacy policy that reflects that. So bare minimum is the it depends kind of wishy-washy part.
So let me ask you this then, because a lot of clients in Canada go with the .ca. If they don't have a .com URL, are they required to have a privacy policy that can extend to Australia or protect them, US, Australia, wherever else?
So no, so your requirement is to have a privacy policy. But if you know that you're, let's say you're a really cool, I don't know, Muskoka based, home business, but you know that the majority of the people purchasing from your website are from New York, it's in your best interest to cater towards their privacy policies as well.
Right, because the internet is all things. Isn't
Right.
that a thing, Internet of Things kind of thing, all things?
World Wide Web, yeah. So you have to, you have to protect yourself and kind of, the way that I advise clients is I always say, well, look, the United States is the largest global market. All the templates that we have on the shop actually have input information regarding to the United States, just to accommodate the fact that that is the largest global market. So we just put it in there because it makes the most sense. In Canada,
it really does.
We love Canada, but on the global field, we're quite small.
Well, when it comes to the market, Canada is a very small market when you think about it. And everyone is looking to get into the US market because it's much larger, and it makes sense. So what other, aside from the privacy policy, I know that there are other policies and contracts that you absolutely have to have. So why don't you talk a little bit about that? Because I don't know that a lot of solopreneurs understand what their obligations are in terms of putting out a website and what needs to be on there.
So when you have a website, there's 3 contracts I always recommend. And we even sell them as a website protection package. We always sell them in 3 because while one is legally required, the other 2 are not, but really it's in your best interest to have them. So that's your terms and conditions, which deals a lot with your intellectual property rights. That one is where we go heavy on, hey, thanks for coming, but don't copy and paste everything. Just know that what's on here is actually mine, right? And so that's what we talk about in our terms and conditions. And we basically tell people how they can use our website.
Okay, yeah.
Right. And then the third one is the disclaimer. A lot of people don't do this one as well. They kind of overlook it. But if you're selling any services or products, or maybe you're just having a blog that does occasional recipes or maybe some lifestyle tips, you are giving advice. Like you are giving information. And so you want to disclaim yourself and basically say, listen, don't act upon any of this. Go seek professional advice, right? Like, all the testimonials we put out here, they're the creme de la crop. They're not standard, right? Just because Jenny Craig lost 800 pounds doesn't mean you will, right? So you want to make sure that's in there as well.
That's right. So that's why at the end of all my episodes, I always say, remember, we're not providing legal advice here. We're just sipping wine and talking IP or contracts or whatever. We're just chatting. It's just a chat. So
which reminds me,
we should sip some wine. That was awesome.
Perfect segue.
Okay, so how do people, they go to your website. How do they know what is the right contract for them?
What a brilliant question. Brilliant question. So we're currently on the back end working on creating a quiz to assist with that. But because there's no lawyer involved, that's kind of one of the downfalls as of right now. There is no lawyer involved. So there is no legal advice given. And that's why it can be as affordable as it is. So it is a bit of a, it's self-explanatory in sense of how we organize it. If you know you're a coach, click on coaching. If you know you're a podcaster, head on over to the podcast section. So we have, the creative section, photographers. We've tried to lay it out as simple as possible. But of course, there is no real way of knowing. You can do some research with some of the larger bundles. So we have ultimate bundles that have everything that you may possibly need. And that can be a good starting point, but it is a bit of the downfall for sure.
So I guess the best way of doing it is to contact you and say, here's my business. I'm going to pay you for your consultation. What do I need? And then I can go to your website and draw and pull the contracts.
And so many of my clients, we do it that way to make it more economical. They pay for the consult and the audit. And so what that is we look at your business, we audit everything that's going on, what you're creating, what your plan is for the next 12 months, because the legal is never a one-stop shop, right? Like, let's not forget, even trademarks, when we're looking at protecting our intellectual property, we start with our brand, then a product, then an offering, right? It's an evolving process. And I think a lot of people, they forget that. And so we do like a roadmap to see, you don't need it today, but in 6 months, it's going to become a necessity for you. And then from there, then they decide to not go custom, and they decide to go with the template, and they're able to make it more economical.
Yeah, that makes so much more sense. And if they find that the contract isn't going to work for them, they've already got you in their pockets, kind of thing, in terms of being the legal consult for creating custom contracts for them.
Absolutely.
So that makes sense. That's awesome. I mean, it's truly a one-stop shop for everything. So I just want to reiterate to our guests out there who are watching that contracts are really important. And it goes without saying that you really need the instruction of a lawyer to determine which ones are the correct contracts for you. So I encourage people to contact you before they just go ahead and hop on here, and at least they need a basis of what contracts they need before they can grab on here, right?
Well, and you said it perfectly, because even though the contracts there are significantly more affordable, they are still an investment. And so you do want to make sure that you are investing in the correct ones for you. And I also want to stipulate that, the contracts, they aren't in place or in lieu of legal advice, right? You're not getting a lawyer. So if you're more advanced in your business, those templates may not work for you anymore, right? They're really designed for beginner entrepreneurs that don't have the funds to invest, into getting custom contracts. Or maybe if you're offering or pivoting to a new area and you want to test it out, but you need to protect yourself, the contracts are a fantastic option. But if you've scaled your business and you're making multiple 6 figures, or you've hit the $1 million mark, at that point, you really shouldn't be skimping on the legal in any way, shape, or form. And you should be doing things more official, down the official routes.
Well, tell us what, because I mean, I don't want to be the harbinger of bad message or bad will or anything. But the reality is that if you don't do it the right way, what can happen?
Oh my goodness. I'm going to tell you a horror story, really, to illustrate the point, because it's a true story, and I'm not going to give too much. There's no personal details. However, I worked with someone once who at the beginning of their business didn't take legal seriously, and in fact, didn't use any contracts whatsoever. And this person was very brilliant, very successful, and their business actually scaled to over 6 figures in less than a year. So they went from 0 to 7. They made $1 million. Did I say that? So they made $1 million in less than a year.
I can't count that many zeros. So.
Oh my God, right? Like, they did amazing. I was blown away. So the fact that they scaled so quickly was amazing. And only at that point did they realize, oh, I should probably take care of the legal now. But what happened, and here in Canada, we have something called a statute of limitations, which means that you can pursue legal action up to 2 years post the date of the event. Right. So what happened is the pandemic hit, and many individuals who invested or purchased pre-pandemic with her, pre-contract her, now all of a sudden wanted refunds. And we're claiming all kinds of things were happening, and threatening so much legal action. And unfortunately, she had no real grounds to stand on. There was nothing to really stand on, because the legal wasn't taken seriously in the beginning. Yeah. So even if you're at the beginning, and we see this a lot with new business owners, are like, I'm going to just test the waters, or like, let's just start making money and then we'll invest properly. And I see this not just with mompreneurs at home. I see this with brick and mortars as well, like coffee shops, restaurants. They're looking at legal like it's a secondary thing, but you can really bite yourself in the butt by doing that. You're really opening yourself up.
Yeah, I mean, we all have stories of like horror stories. People who take on their own IP end up, having a registered trademark that means nothing, because the goods and services have nothing to do with what they're actually
Oh gosh.
Right. Yeah, that, we get it all the time.
No,
Um,
and with you, I always say, I mean, why waste money on a service that's going to take upwards of 2 years, now longer due to the pandemic, that, like without actually doing it properly? I mean, it's a grand waste of time. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
this is fantastic. I really appreciate this. Is there any specific contract that you would recommend to each and every entrepreneur, solopreneur, or whatever?
My absolute favorite contract is the media release form.
Ah,
Yes. You said every industry, so maybe not typical for every industry, but if you're operating online in any capacity, or you're relying on marketing efforts from in-person events, you need a media release form.
why?
Okay, so a media, let's go. I love it. So
Tell me the why.
okay, so a media release form effectively allows you to divulge your rights, give up your rights to written word, audio, so podcasts, video, and photography. All right. So I'll give you an example. Let's say, and it's very popular right now in online businesses to get video testimonials, to do video collaborations, in order to boost your own business, right? You're like, listen to Jenny Craig, who lost 800 pounds, and then Jenny will talk, right? So when we're looking at that example, right, for all intents and purposes, the person that we're asking to write or to video themselves and give us the video testimonial, I mean, they directed it. They did their own hair and makeup. They were in charge of costume. They figured out lighting and props, and they're the star of the show. So
And they
even
own their own copyright and their moral rights in there. So yes.
right? I mean, it's theirs, 100% theirs. So even if they're creating the testimonial for your business, it doesn't give you the rights in your business to use it however you want.
Right.
You're not allowed to. So plain and simple. So that person, if their testimonial effectively makes you millions of dollars, I mean, there's nothing stopping them from asking for royalties, right? Commissions, like, they're the star of the show. I mean, we're seeing this with the Nirvana baby, right? That's a little bit more your domain,
Okay. I know who you're talking about, the baby Nirvana. He's swimming in the pool. Yeah.
So you want to make sure you own absolutely everything, from a social media standpoint or a marketing standpoint yourself. You want your business to own it. And the best way to do that is via a media release form.
I like to use the analogy, be proactive rather than reactive, because reactive costs you more money.
But not a little bit, like a lot,
like
taking a contract that, even just talking about, we can apply this to any situation, but I say too, it's like, maybe you purchased a contract for $1,000 drafted by a lawyer, right? Let's just say. Then you sell that contract to 10 different clients, because now you have 10 clients. I mean, and each of those contracts that $3,000. I mean, the value of your contract now is $30,000. Plain and simple. Your ROI is infinite with this contract. Now, if there's a breach of that contract and you are freaking out in your bed at night, because I mean, I don't know how many times I get those calls, I'm sure you do too, where the person's like freaking out and it's like, no. I want you to go to bed knowing like, Elena's got, like, we're good. Like, right? Like, you want them to feel comfortable. But if you were to take them to even just a small claims court, I mean, you're looking at $20,000 to $30,000 just to argue maybe a small, non-payment of $3,000, right? Yeah. It doesn't make sense in the end, but $3,000 can make a big difference to somebody's livelihood. So it is risk. It's like such a balance of risk, and truly it always favors in being proactive, always, every time.
I love this. Excellent. Okay. Do you have any other things you want to say to the people out there about your business?
Anybody listening, you guys are amazing. And I know the fact that you've listened this far shows that you already are taking an interest in your business. And that is the most important thing. You're doing the things that are meant to take you to the next level. And there's a difference between a successful entrepreneur and we're just testing it out entrepreneur. And so the fact that you're here, you're in category 1.
Right. we're going to put Elena's information down below so that you can contact her if you have any questions about contracts or whatnot. We're also going to attach a link to her website where the contracts reside, where you can go on, purchase the contracts that you think or you know that you need. I do encourage you to contact Elena directly to do an audit, because you want to be proactive about your business. It's important.
So smart.
Thank you, Elena. Thank you so much. Cheers.
You
Really
cheers.
enjoyed this.
As did I. And have a lovely time, everybody.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of IP Somm. Remember, we're not providing legal advice here. We're just sipping some wine today, and we're talking about legal contracts. Thanks.